So you're thinking of buying a lake home in 2025? Well, before you go dropping millions of dollars on a lake property in Lake Tahoe, the Ozarks, or Lake Geneva, you need to stop and watch this video, because today I'm going to be breaking down why the Brainerd Lakes area in Minnesota is the last best place to buy a luxury lake home without dealing with insane HOA rules, sky-high taxes, and overcrowded tourist traps. So stick around, because I'm going to compare home prices, short-term rental rules, and hidden costs at all of the top vacation home markets. I'm going to tell you which one actually makes the best investment. We're going to get after it right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Living in Brainerd, Minnesota channel, your go-to channel for everything about buying, selling, and living in the Brainerd Lakes area. And if you want to know what's really happening in the real estate market here, make sure you hit that subscribe button, tap the bell for notifications. That way you don't miss out on anything. My name is Noah Gedker with eXp Realty, and whether you're looking to buy a lake home in 9 days or 9 months, my team and I would love to help you. All my contact info is in the description down below, so let's chat. All right, let's start with the big question. Are home prices dropping in 2025? And the answer is kinda, but not really. Some markets are certainly seeing slight price reductions. Lake homes and vacation properties are actually holding their value better than a lot of regular residential markets. Why is that? Well, because demand for second homes is still really quite through the roof, especially in places like Brainerd Lakes area, Lake Tahoe, and the Ozarks. But the bigger question is, where do you get the best deal? And where is your investment actually going to grow? So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the map just to show different lake home markets, and we'll talk through each one. All right, so I'm going to compare kind of what you get for around $1 million in the different markets, okay? So Lake Tahoe obviously is a premium lake home destination in this country, right? Typical home price, on the lake, going to be starting out around $3.5 million for private waterfront on Lake Tahoe. If you're starting out at $1 million, you can be near the lake. Certainly you can find some nice homes that are updated, but they're going to be near the lake. You're not going to be on the lake. You might get views or partial views, so you could have like a access to the lake, and that could be vary the types of access that you have. We cover that in another video. So property taxes, of course, are going to be very high. California and Nevada don't mess around with taxes. Obviously, you need to do your research where you'd want to be if you're going to Lake Tahoe, if you're going to be on the California side or the Nevada side. Then it comes to short-term rental rules. So if you're planning on renting it out at all, the rules there can get pretty strict. Some areas ban short-term rentals completely. And if you're in an HOA, they probably also, for sure, are going to ban short-term rentals. And then you just have to deal with HOA drama for sure. Many areas require HOA approval for every little thing, even the color of your dock. If you want some control over your property and maybe have a little bit slightly different taste than the typical person, it might make it a little more difficult. So in Tahoe, not only are you paying a premium for the house, but good luck if you want to Airbnb it or even make a small update. Plus, if you think Minnesota winters are bad, try dealing with California's never-ending fire season and Nevada's absurd cost of living. So let's go ahead and move on to the next lake area destination, Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva, just southeastern Wisconsin, just to the northwest of Chicago. So no wonder why they've got a pretty obvious draw of population and money that can be invested there, right? If you want to be on the water with your own private lakeshore on Lake Geneva, plan for an entry home to be about right around $2.5–3 million is probably what you're looking at. For around $1 million, you could, it's kind of similar to Tahoe, is that you'll certainly be able to find homes that are very close, maybe just a block off or two from the lake, or maybe you're close enough where you have a view or a partial view, and then maybe you have some sort of access to the lake that you are granted, that, and you might even be paying some kind of monthly or quarterly or annual fee to maintain. Maybe there's a dock slip that you can utilize. It might be a monthly rental, or maybe it's a day use. You can use it for the day. Price ranges are typically going to be pretty similar to Lake Tahoe. I think Lake Tahoe is probably a little bit higher, but you do get that Chicago money for Lake Geneva. And the style of homes, again, for Lake Tahoe, if I go back, it's going to be more rustic, as you could maybe imagine. Lake Geneva is typically going to be a little more of that northeast Cape Cod type look, right? And then with property taxes on Lake Geneva, they're pretty much about double what you're going to pay in the Brainerd Lakes area. That is definitely something you got to factor in, okay? Then when it comes to short-term rental rules, again, same thing with like Lake Tahoe, very strict HOA policies in many areas, high nightly taxes for Airbnb, VRBO rentals. Again, HOAs, same thing, just absolutely. Many neighborhoods have mandatory association fees and regulations on everything. So Lake Geneva certainly is beautiful, don't get me wrong, but you are paying a premium for the name. Also, HOAs love making up rules. As for those of you who maybe live year-round in an HOA, maybe you have some experience with that. So I love to hear those crazy stories. So you can share those in the comments too. And then if you want to park your boat in the driveway, maybe it's a few days for whatever reason, good luck. You'll probably see a fine in your mailbox within a couple of days. So you need to get board approval for anything like that. All right, let's move south, head down to Missouri and Arkansas to the Ozarks and see what the lake home is like on Table Rock Lake. All right, so now we come to the Ozarks, our third stop for today. So now we're getting a little bit more into sane home prices, if you will, at least for lake homes, right? So the median home price for a home on Table Rock Lake near Branson is going to be somewhere around 750,000 up to about $1 million. Certainly there's homes that are, up to 10 million that you can find, but typically you can get, if your budget is 750,000, you can get your own private lakeshore, and not truly private. I'll get to that in a moment. That's part of the drawback to the Ozarks, okay? This is a growing area. This is becoming a very popular area. Table Rock Lake is going to be more for people looking for fishing, right? It's a little bit different type of lake than what we've covered so far. You're going to see a lot more fishermen and less jet skiing and that kind of stuff. So prices are lower here. Property taxes are lower than most states, but there's high flood insurance costs. So you'll want to take a look at that, make sure, see how crazy that might be. And then short-term rental rules, they certainly can be pretty friendly, much more than the other two areas. So that's a good thing. And it does vary by county. And since Table Rock Lake spreads a large area, depending on where you're looking, there may be better counties than others in terms of regulations there, short-term rental. The HOAs, they're a little bit out of control too. There's lots of gated communities with mandatory HOAs. If it's something you want to stay away from, you got to watch out. The Ozarks are actually a very solid option. Prices are lower than Tahoe and Geneva. It's STR friendly. But what are the downsides? Well, I would say the biggest, tornadoes, that would be a big one. Unpredictable tornadoes, not so good. I would say one of the biggest ones would actually be that, I said, I'll get back to you about the private lakeshore part. You cannot own lakeshore on Table Rock Lake. The Corps of Engineers owns the entire lake, and they own a certain amount up the shoreline, basically. So you can't put a dock in. I mean, even if you could put a dock in, if the Corps of Engineers allows you to, most of the properties are so steep, there would be almost no way to put it in. You have to have an elevator or a lift type thing to get down to the water. And lots of times it's rock cliffs. So most people on Table Rock Lake, as you can see here, just like that, will have maybe a mile or two away, or if they're lucky, closer, will have a dock slip where they can keep their boat. And then they generally have to pay for that. And then you have to drive to it. So what you're getting in the Ozarks is the view. I mean, the views are pretty amazing. All right, let's head north to Minnesota, the Brainerd Lakes area, and we'll cover what lake homes are like there. All right, I be a little bit biased, but here we are, Brainerd Lakes area, home to about 500 lakes. It is the playground of Minnesota. It is the premier lake home vacation destination of Minnesota, and it should be for the whole country. But again, I'm biased, so. And if you've been here, or maybe you're from the Brainerd Lakes area, or had a cabin or vacation here, leave that in the comments too. I'd love to hear about it. So the typical lake home, if you want to be on a lake with private lake shore, your budget you'll need is going to vary. Well, there's 500 lakes. So as you could imagine, there's a whole variety of sizes of lakes and types of lakes and elevation and shoreline and just a whole dynamic of decisions or choices that you have. And some lakes are better than others. So as you can imagine, the prices on some lakes will be higher than others. So quick overview here. So right up here, we've got the Whitefish chain of lakes, and then the Gull Lake chain of lakes right here. So those are going to be your premium, the highest priced properties are going to be on those lakes. And then depending on where you're at on those chains will also affect the property value there. Okay. And then any of these little bit larger lakes are going to be higher price as well. So Serpent Lake over here, Bay Lake, a lot of really good lakes, but typically, you know, people wanting that lake life are usually wanting to like jet ski or, you know, water sports, all that kind of stuff on the lake. Typically find that probably you want a lake that's about 300 acres or larger in order to be able to do that. That could change depending on what you're doing. But what you're typically going to find, your own private lake shore, around 600,000, 700,000, up to $1 million. Pretty similar pricing as the Ozarks. Now there's also homes for 3, 4, 5 million. And again, if you're on Gull Lake or the Whitefish chain, those are going to be for 600,000. It might be more of a teardown type, if I can say that. On a few of these other lakes, it's going to be a really nice house, a good mix of rustic and luxury. But again, the whole point of a lake home is to enjoy the lake, at least in this area. So property taxes are going to be lower here than in Wisconsin or California. This area is very short-term rental friendly in most areas and pretty easy to do, like Airbnb, that kind of thing. The drama from HOAs is pretty non-existent or practically non-existent. The Brainerd Lakes area is literally one of the last places where you can still buy a true luxury lake home without getting nickel and dimed by HOAs or local short-term rental restrictions or permitting fees. You get stunning sandy bottom lakes and your own private dock, great small town lake life experiences without having to take out second, third, fourth mortgage just to cover your HOA fees. If maybe you're on a lake where for some reason that day is busy, just hop over to another lake. That's definitely something you can do too, because there's so many options. Lake life is just part of life around here. Now let's break down why avoiding an HOA could be the best decision you ever make, or if just maybe you actually need one. So we'll figure that out. Some pros, you know, you can paint your house whatever color you want. You can put up a flagpole if you so desire, build the dock that you want, you know, put in a fire pit, whatever, you know, customize your property the way you want it. No extra fees, you know, why pay hundreds of dollars a month just be told that you can't park your truck in your driveway, or maybe you just don't have anywhere else but to store. You got a couple of jet skis and they're stored on the side of your property and they're really not bothering anybody or really that visible. And then no rental restrictions for the most part. You can easily rent it out to help offset some costs. A low passive income. Got to tell you the whole story, of course, be, you know, transparent. There are some cons to an HOA free lake home. No one's going to stop that crazy neighbor. We all know that guy, the one with the rusted out boat sitting in his yard for 15, 20 years. Without an HOA, you know, it's probably not anyone that's going to make him clean that up. And then winter maintenance, that is on you. So some HOAs handle plowing, road maintenance, etc. Without one, at the mercy of the city or your own snowblower. Of course, you can also hire somebody to do it without having an HOA take care of it all. So there's options there, but there are some downsides. I think the positives way outweigh the downsides. So bottom line, if you want total freedom, the Brainerd Lakes area is the move for you. But if you need a little structure, a light HOA might not be the worst thing, okay? So just make sure that the HOA doesn't get too power hungry. All right, so look, at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with a lake home, but if you want the best mix of affordability, flexibility, investment potential, the Brainerd Lakes area is by far the best place to buy in 2025. It's still under the radar compared to places like Tahoe or Lake Geneva, and you're not getting slammed with endless HOA fees or government regulations and stuff like that. And then you can actually enjoy your shoreline, have a beach out front, as opposed to a place like down in the Ozarks where you don't get a beach. You don't get that private shoreline technically. So what do you think? Would you ever live in a lake community with an HOA? Have you dealt with HOA nightmares? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And hey, if you're ready to start looking at a lake home in the Brainerd Lakes area, let's chat. Give me a call, shoot me a text, book a Zoom call with me in the link in the description. I'd love to help you find your dream lake home here in the Brainerd Lakes area without all the unnecessary drama. So until next time, I'll see you around town.